Okay, hello ladies and gentlemen, Oseman here and welcome back to another, excuse me, welcome back to another reading live stream. Very late night, I know, I can't help it. Well, actually, yes I could, but I was playing Mario Kart with some friends earlier. So yeah, that was fun. But anyway, so we are going to be reading the rest of part 3 of Loveless. I'm not gonna go crazy. So, to recap where we're at right now with this book, our character, the main character that I'm reading as, has officially broken up with Jason. And he is not in a good mood about it. Understandably so. He's not happy about it. But you know, she's got to move on, even though she's still feeling very bad about what she said and how she said it, you know, etc., etc. Um, so that's one situation that's going on. Now we're continuing with part 3. If you thought it was she put herself in a bit of a hole in the last reading stream, from what I've read, you ain't heard nothing yet. So without further ado, let's begin. I was gonna say it would be very weird for that cricket to just stop out of nowhere, you know what I'm saying? I'm actually gonna go ahead and take my glasses off for the moment. But without further ado, let's begin. Mirror World. I didn't tell Pip. I didn't want to disappoint her too. The day after my date with Jason, I started to wonder whether he would tell Pip, and Pip would hate me. But then she messaged me that afternoon with a link to a really funny TikTok, which definitely meant that Jason hadn't told her. The day after that, Pip messaged me asking if I wanted to meet up with her for a study session at the big university. The day after that, Pip messaged me asking if I wanted to meet up with her for a study session in the big university library because she hated doing uni work by herself in her room, and I agreed. Jason, she explained, had rowing practice, so he couldn't come. We didn't chat much while we were there. I had an Age of Chivalry assignment, and she was doing chemistry work that looked 10 times more difficult than my essay on Destiny and Trajan de Troyes' Percival. I was glad we didn't talk much, because if she'd asked me about Jason, I wouldn't have been able to lie. It was nearly 9 o'clock at night by the time we'd both finished, so we decided to get some fish and chips and head back to my room to catch up on Killing Eve. It probably would have been a normal evening. It probably would have cheered me up a bit after everything that had happened, if we hadn't entered my bedroom to find Rooney crying. And before anybody wonders what the hell is going on with the camera compared to how it was last night, how it was not anywhere near as foggy as it is, yeah, I can't explain it. You know, I tried to clean it, but it's not working right now. So just bear with it. Just bear with the camera being like that. She was curled up under her sheets, clearly trying to hide the fact that she was upset, but failing utterly because of how loudly she was sniffing. My first thought was that Rooney was never in our room at this time of the evening. My second thought was, why is she crying? Pip had frozen next to me. There was no escaping the situation. We could see Rooney was crying. She knew that we knew. There was no pretending this wasn't happening. Hey, I said, properly entering the room. Pip hovered in the doorway, clearly trying to decide whether to stay or go. But just as I turned to tell her to leave, She came inside and closed the door behind her. I'm fine, came the teary response. Pip laughed, then seemed to instantly regret it. At the sound of Pip's voice, Rooney peered over her covers. Upon seeing Pip, her eyes narrowed. Can you leave? She said, immediately less tearful and more Rooney. Pip cleared her throat. I wasn't laughing at you. I was just laughing because you said you were fine when you're clearly not. I mean, like, you're literally crying. Not that that's funny, it was just a bit stupid. Rooney's face, very clearly tear-stained, hardened. Leave. Pip rummaged in her bag of fish and chips and withdrew a large clump of paper napkins. She jogged over to Rooney's bed, placed them right at the bottom of the duvet, and jogged back to the door. There. Rooney looked at the napkins, then up at Pip, and, for once, she didn't say a thing. Pip ran a hand through her hair and looked off to one side. I hope you feel better soon. And if you need any more tissues, I can go get some? There was a pause. I think I have enough now. Thank you, said Rooney. Cool. I'll just go then. Cool. Are you okay? Rooney stared at her for a long moment. Pip didn't wait for an answer. Yeah. No. Sorry. I'm going. She swung round and practically ran from the room. As soon as the door clicked shut, Rooney slowly sat up, picked up one of the napkins, and dabbed her eyes. I sat down on my own bed, dropping my bags onto the sheets. Are you okay? I asked. This made her raise her head. Her eye makeup was smeared down her cheeks, her ponytail falling out of place, and she was wearing normal going-out clothes, a bar dot top and tight skirt. There was a moment of silence, and then she started crying again. Okay, I was going to have to deal with this situation. Somehow. I stood up and walked over towards her kettle, which she kept plugged in on her desk. I filled it up from our bathroom sink, then put it on to boil. Rooney liked tea. The first thing she did after getting back to our room was always to make a cup of tea. While waiting for it to boil, I cautiously sat on the edge of her bed. I suddenly noticed there was something on the floor under my feet. The photo of Rooney in mermaid hair Beth. It must have fallen off the wall. I picked it up and put it on her bedside table. What was this about? The play, maybe? That was about 80% of what she talked about. Maybe it was a relationship thing. Maybe she'd had an argument with a guy. Or maybe it was a family thing. I didn't know anything about Rooney's family or her life back home at all, really. I've always hated being asked if I am okay. The available answers are either to lie and say I'm fine, or to massively and embarrassingly overshare. So instead of asking Rooney that again, I said, Do you want me to get your pajamas? For a moment, I wondered if she hadn't heard me. But then she nodded. I leaned back and grabbed her pajamas from the end of the bed. She always wore matching button-up ones with cute patterns. Here, I said, holding them out for her. She sniffed. Then she took them. While she was changing, I went over to the kettle and made her some tea. When I returned, she had transformed into bedtime Rooney and accepted the mug. Thanks, she mumbled and sipped it immediately. People who drink tea must not have any sensation left on their tongues, I swear to God. I linked my fingers together, awkwardly in my lap. Sorry. Do you want to talk about it? I asked. She snorted, which was at least slightly better than the sobbing. Is that a no? I said. She sipped again. There was a long pause. I was about to give up and go back to my own bed when she said, "Had sex with some guy." "Oh," I said. "What, recently?" "Yeah, like a couple of hours ago." She sighed. "I was bored." "Oh, well, good for you." And then I just heard footsteps, but we're gonna read until I hear something else. She shook her head slowly. "No, not really. It was bad. I just did it to try and fill a hole." I considered this. "I may be a virgin," I said, "but I sort of thought that filling a hole was usually the point." Rooney let out a cackle. "Oh my god, you did not just make that joke." I glanced at her. She was grinning. "Are you referring to a different hole?" I asked. "A non-vaginal one?" "Yes, Georgia. I'm not talking about my fucking vagina." It sounds very weird that I'm reading this. But whatever. I'm already deep in this hole, I might as well keep on going. "Okay, just checking." I paused. "I thought you were all sex positive and stuff. There's nothing wrong with casual sex." "I know that," she said, then shook her head. "I still believe in all of that. I'm not saying that having casual sex makes me a bad person, because it doesn't. And I really do enjoy it. But tonight, it was just..." She sipped her tea, her eyes filling with tears again. "You know when you eat too much cake and it makes you feel sick? It was sort of like that. I thought it'd be fun, but it just made me feel lonely." "Oh." I didn't want to pry, so I just remained silent. Rooney drank the rest of her tea in a few big gulps. "Do you want to watch some YouTube?" she asked. This threw me. Uh, sure." She put down her mug, stood up, threw open the duvet, and slipped inside. She shuffled over to one side and patted the space next to her, indicating for me to get in. "I mean, you don't have to," Rooney said, sensing my hesitation. "Do you have a lecture in the morning or something?" I didn't. I had a fully free day of no contact time tomorrow. "Nah, I have to eat my fish and chips anyway." I retrieved my dinner, then lay down next to her. It felt right and wrong at the same time. A mirror world. The same as my own bed, but everything was opposite. She smiled and pulled her floral duvet over us and huddled towards me to get comfy, then grabbed a laptop from her bedside table. She opened up YouTube. I didn't really watch any YouTubers. I only used YouTube for trailers, fan videos, and TikTok compilations. Excuse me. But Rooney seemed to be subscribed to dozens upon dozens of channels. It surprised me. She hadn't seemed like the sort of person to be into YouTube. "There's this really funny YouTuber I watch a lot." "Sure," I said. Rooney says that first bit. "Sure," I said. "Do you want some chips?" "God, yes." She found the channel and searched through the videos until she found the one she wanted. And then we lay together in her bed and watched it. Rooney sharing my chips. It was a pretty funny video, to be fair. It was just this YouTuber and his friends playing this weird singing game. I kept giggling aloud, which made Rooney laugh, and before I knew it, we'd been watching for 20 whole minutes. She immediately found another video she wanted to show me, and I was happy to let her. Halfway through, she rested her head on my shoulder. And I don't know. That was probably the calmest I'd ever seen her. We watched silly videos for another hour or so until Rooney shut her laptop and put it aside, and stumbled back down into the bed. I wondered whether she'd fallen asleep, and if so, should I just go back to my own bed, because I definitely wasn't going to be able to sleep here in such a close proximity to another person. But then Rooney spoke. I used to have a boyfriend, she said. A long-term boyfriend. From when I was 14 until I was 17. Wow, really? Yeah. We broke up when I was in year 12. I'd assumed that Rooney had always been like Rooney. That she'd always been this carefree, fun-loving, passionate person who wasn't bothered about commitment. A 3-year-long relationship? That wasn't what I had expected. Things with him were very bad, she said. It was a very bad relationship in a lot of ways, and it really put me off wanting them. I didn't ask her to elaborate. I could imagine what she meant. I haven't liked anyone since then, she mumbled again. I've been scared to, but I might be starting to like someone new. Yeah? I really don't want to be doing that. Why? It just won't end well. She shook her head. And she hates me anyway. I knew instantly that she meant Pip. I don't think she hates you, I said gently. Rooney said nothing. Anyway, you're only 18. You got so much time, I started to say, but didn't know how to continue. What did I mean when I said that? That she'd definitely find the perfect relationship someday? Because I knew that wasn't true. Not for me. Not for anyone. It was something adults said all the time. You'll change your mind when you're older. You'll never know what might happen. You'll feel differently one day. As if we teenagers knew so little about ourselves that that we could wake up one day a completely different person. As if the person we are right now doesn't matter at all. The whole idea that people always grew up, fell in love, and got married was a complete lie. How long would it take for me to accept that? I'm 19, she said. I frowned. Wait, are you? Did you have a gap year? No. It was my birthday last week. This confused me more. What? When? Last Thursday. Last Thursday. I could barely remember anything about it. Uni days were all blurring into one endless stream of lectures and meals and sleep. You didn't say anything, I said. No, she laughed, partially muffled by her pillow. I started thinking what would happen if people knew it was my birthday. I just ended up going another night out with a bunch of people I really don't know that well. And they'd all pretend to be my friend and sing happy birthday and take fake happy selfies for Instagram before we'd all separate and hook up with different people. And I'd just end up in some stranger's bed after having below average sex. Hating myself again. If you told me, we could have done none of that. She smiled. What would we have done? I don't know. Sat in here and eaten pizza? I could have forced you to watch Bridesmaids. She snorted. That's a shit movie. It's not the best, but the romance is literal perfection. They sit on a car and eat carrot sticks together. The dream. We lay there in silence for a little while. You don't like having casual sex anymore, I said, realizing what she'd been trying to say earlier. It wasn't that casual sex had hurt her, or that it made her a bad person. It didn't. You want... It wasn't even that she wanted a relationship. Not really. She wanted what a relationship would give her. You want someone to know you, I said. She stayed silent for a moment. I waited for her to tell me how wrong I was. Instead, she said, I'm just lonely. I'm just so lonely all the time. I didn't know what to say to that beyond... I didn't know what to say to that, but I didn't need to, because she fell asleep a few minutes later. I looked over her head and saw that Roderick had significantly wilted. Rooney was definitely forgetting to water him. I stood up at the ceiling and listened to her breathing next to me, but I didn't want to leave the bed, because even though I couldn't sleep, and I was paranoid about drooling over on her or rolling on top of her by accident, Rooney needed me for some reason. Maybe because, despite all of her friends and acquaintances, nobody really knew her like I did. But if she cannot love you... Jason still showed up to our next Shakespeare social rehearsal the following week. I didn't think he would. I had messaged him to apologize again, to try and explain, even though I was shit at articulating any of my thoughts and feelings. He'd read it but didn't reply. I spent most of my lectures that week zoned out, not taking enough notes, wondering how I was going to salvage our friendship out of the chaos I had created. Jason liked me romantically. I had taken advantage of that to figure out my sexual identity, knowing I didn't like him like that in return. Selfish. I was so selfish. He looked exhausted when he rolled up to our rehearsal in full rowing club kit, a heavy rucksack hanging off his shoulder. His teddy jacket was absent. I was so used to wearing it that he seemed sort of vulnerable without it. He walked straight past me, without looking at me, mouth clamped shut, and sat down next to Pip, who was going over today's scene. Sunil arrived moments later. He was wearing checkered trousers with a black shearling jacket and a beanie. He took one look at Jason and said, You look exhausted. Jason grunted, rowing. Oh, yes. How are the 6 a.m. practices? Freezing and wet. You could quit, said Pip. She seemed a little hopeful at the prospect. Jason shook his head. Nah, I do enjoy it. I've made a lot of friends there. He shot a quick glance at me. It's just been a lot. I turned away. There was no way to make this better. In true Jason tradition, he was assigned the role of a stern older man. This time it was Duke Orsino from Twelfth Night, another of Shakespeare's rom-coms. The premise of Twelfth Night is a big messy love triangle. Viola is shipwrecked in the land of Illyria, and since she has no money, disguises herself as a boy called Cesario, and so that she can get a job as a servant to Duke Orsino. The Duke is in love with the noble lady of Illyria, Olivia, so he sends Viola to express his love for her. Unfortunately, instead of accepting the Duke's feelings, Olivia falls in love with Viola, who is disguised as Cesario, a guy. And, doubly unfortunate, Viola falls in love with the Duke. It's not technically gay, but let's be real, this play is very, very gay. Especially when you consider that during Shakespeare's time, you actually did have men play the role of female characters, which isn't really the case nowadays. Nowadays, females play the role of the female characters and males play the role of the male characters. But back then, no, not very many females, if any, were allowed in those plays. Sunil had already volunteered to be Viola, saying, quote, Just give me all the roles that mess around with gender, please. Pip and I huddled next to each other against the wall with my coat over our legs. It was freezing cold in our giant rehearsal room today. You two run through the scene, said Rooney. I need to go and get some tea or I will actually die. She'd had another one of her nights out last night. Give me a coffee, shouted Pip as Rooney went to leave. I would literally rather stomp on a nail, Rooney shouted back, and I was interested to see that this made Pip laugh instead of her usual gritted teeth annoyance. Jason and Sunil were amazing. Jason was well practiced, having done a lot of Shakespeare before, and Sunil was equally good, despite the fact that the only acting he'd done was a minor role in a school production of Wicked. Jason was all, once more, Cesario, and Sunil was all, but if she cannot love you, sir? And, overall, it was a very successful run-through. I sat and watched, and it almost took me out of my head, making me forget about everything that had happened in the past couple of months. I could just live in the world of Viola and Orsino for a while. I am all the daughters of my father's house, said Sunil, one of the final lines of the scene. And all the brothers, too. He glanced up at me and Pip with a smile, momentarily breaking character. That's such a good line. New Twitter bio. Sunil really seemed to be enjoying being in the production. Maybe more than any of us, to be honest. He and Jason went off to work on the scene on their own, and with nothing to do, I stayed sitting against the wall, knees tucked up to my chin, waiting for Rooney to come back from her tea run. Georgia? I looked up at the voice to find Pip scooting over to me, her open copy of Twelfth Night in one hand. I had an idea, she said, about what you could do in the play. I was really not in the mood to actually do any acting today. I wasn't sure I could act as well as I thought, anyway. Okay. There's another character in Twelfth Night who has quite a big thematic role. The clown. I snorted. You want me to be the clown? Well, that's just what he's called in the text. He's more of a court jester. Pip pointed at the scene in question. The clown had some lines leading up to the scene that Jason and Sunil were currently working on. Wait. I thought it might be really cool to have you do some of these bits before this Viola Orsino scene. Orsino scene. I read the lines, skeptical. I don't know, I glanced at her. My acting's been pretty shit lately. Pip frowned. Dude, that's not true. Those rules just weren't right for you. You're not shit at anything. I didn't reply. How about you just give it a go? I promise I'll be nothing but supportive. And I'll throw something at Rooney if she says anything negative about you. As if to demonstrate, Pip pulled her boot off and held it aloft. This made me laugh. Okay, fine, I'll try. I'm back! Rooney galloped into the room, somehow not spilling hot drinks everywhere. She slumped down next to me and Pip, putting her tea on the floor and handing a coffee to Pip. Excuse me. Pip stared at it. Wait, you actually got me one? Rooney shrugged. Yeah? Pip looked up at Rooney, genuine surprise, and something almost akin to fondness on her face. Thanks. Rooney stared back and seemed to have wrench her head away. So, how's the scene going? It's only 2 weeks until the Bailey Ball. We need to get this one locked down before then. I had an idea, said Pip. We could add in the clown. I half expected Rooney to immediately protest this, but instead, she sat down next to Pip and leaned towards her so she could read her copy of Twelfth Night. Pip made a face of moderate alarm before relapsing, though not without very quickly adjusting her hair. I think that's a good idea, said Rooney. Yeah? Asked Pip. Yeah, you do sometimes have good ideas. Pip grinned. Sometimes. Sometimes. That means a lot, Pip nudged her. Coming from you. And I swear to God, Rooney went redder than I had ever seen her. It's been a long time since I'd stood on a stage alone. Well, it wasn't technically a stage, but the way the other four were sitting in front of me, watching, while I was standing in front of them, had the same effect. In Twelfth Night, the clown, whose name is actually Festa, shows up periodically to either provide some light comic relief or to sing a song relevant to the themes of the story. Right before Jason and Sunil's scene, Festa sings a song, Come Away Death, about a man who dies, possibly of heartbreak, because a woman doesn't love him back, and he wants to be buried alone because he's so sad. It's basically just a fancy way of saying that unrequited love is pretty rough. We all decided that I should recite it as a monologue rather than sing, which I was grateful about, but I was still nervous. I could do this. I wanted to prove that I could do this. Come away, death, I began, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. I can do this. And in sad cypress, let me be laid. I kept my voice soft. Fly away, breath. I am slain by a fair, cruel maid. And I read the rest of the song, and I felt all of it. I just felt all of it. The mourning, the wistfulness, the fantasy of something that could never happen. I never experienced unrequited love. I never would. And Festa, the clown, wasn't even talking about himself. He was telling someone else's story. But I felt it anyway. Lay me, oh, where sad true love never find my grave, to weep there. There was a pause, before I closed my book and looked up at my friends. They were all staring at me, transfixed. And then Pip just started clapping. Fucking yes! Absolutely fucking yes! I'm a genius! You're a genius! This play is going to be genius! Rudy joined in with the applause. So did Sunil. And I saw Jason very suddenly wipe his eye. That was okay? I asked. Although that's not really what I wanted to ask. Was I good? Will I be okay? Everything in my life was upside down. But did I still have this? Did I still have one thing that brought me happiness? More than okay, said Pip, smiling wide, and I thought, yeah, okay. I hated myself right now for a lot of reasons, but at least I had this. We're about halfway through this part. So let's do this. 2 roommates. In the 2 weeks between that rehearsal and the Bailey Ball, we had 3 more rehearsals, during which we completely surpassed Rudy's aim of getting 1 scene done. We got all 3 done. Much Ado About Nothing with Pip and Rooney, 12th Night with Jason, Sunil, and me, and Romeo and Juliet with Jason and Rooney, having decided that I wasn't the best choice for Juliet. We even had time for the pizza night we'd promised Sunil. He and Jason seemed to be fast friends, getting immersed in a discussion about musicals they'd seen, and Rooney and Pip managed to make it through a whole movie without making a single snide comment to each other. At one point they were even sitting with their shoulders pressed together, amiably sharing a packet of tortilla chips. Despite everything that was happening behind the scenes, it was coming together. We were actually making a production. Thank God I had that to hang on to. Without it, I would have probably just stayed in bed for 2 weeks, because figuring out my sexuality had unearthed a new kind of self-hatred I hadn't been ready for. I thought figuring that out was supposed to make me feel proud or something. Clearly not. Something was up with Rooney, too. Something had changed in her after that night we'd walked in to find her crying. She stopped going out in the meetings, in the evenings, instead spending them watching YouTube videos or TV shows or just sleeping. I'd gotten used to the clacking of her frantic typing next to me in our English lectures, but it had stopped, and I often caught her just sitting very still, staring into the distance, not listening to the lectures at all. Sometimes she seemed fine. Sometimes she was normal, Rooney, directing the play with an iron fist, being the shiniest person in the room, chatting to 12 different people in dinner time in the college cafeteria. She was at her best when Pip was around, exchanging banter and jokes with her, lighting up in a way that she didn't with anyone else. But even with her, I sometimes noticed Rooney turn away, put physical distance between them, and she didn't want Pip to even see her, and she was scared what would happen if they got too close. I could have checked if she was okay, but I was too wrapped up in my own feelings, and she didn't check if I was okay either, because she was too wrapped up in hers. I didn't blame her, and I hoped she didn't blame me. We were just two roommates dealing with things that were difficult to talk about. Hello, V. How are you doing tonight? The Bailey Ball. If you send me the photos of you in your dress, said Mom on the Skype in the afternoon of the Bailey Ball, I'll get them printed out and sent to all the grandparents. I sighed. It's not the same as prom. I don't think there'll be official photography. Well, just make sure you get at least one full-length pic of you in your dress. I bought it, so I need to see it in action. Mom had bought me my Bailey Ball dress, though it had been my choice. I hadn't actually planned on getting it because it was too expensive, but when I was sending links to potential dresses to her while we chatted on Messenger, she offered to pay for it. It was really nice of her, and honestly, it made me feel a pang of homesickness more intense than I'd experienced so far at uni. Did any boys ask you to be their date to the ball? Mom, British universities don't do that. That's American schools who do that. Well, it would have been nice, wouldn't it? Everyone just goes with their friends, Mom. Mom sighed. You're going to look so beautiful, she cooed. Make sure you do your hair nicely. I will, I said. Rooney had already offered to do it for me. You never know, you might meet your future husband tonight. I laughed before I could stop myself. 2 months ago, I would have been dreaming of a perfect, magical meet cute at my first university ball. But now, I dressed for myself. Yeah, I said, clearing my throat. You never know. Doing good? That's good to hear. I don't think I'm just saying it just to hear myself talk and to move on. I do mean what I'm saying here. But I do want to try to get through this book, well, this part of the book as soon as possible. But that don't mean I'm not going to stop. That doesn't mean I'm not going to stop to read chat, because I will stop to read chat in between certain points, whether end of chapter or chapter intermissions, I guess we could say. Excuse me. Rooney was silent while she did my hair with some thick curling tongs, her eyebrows furrowed in concentration. She knew how to do those big loose waves that you always see on American TV shows, but I found absolutely impossible to replicate by myself. Rooney had already done her own hair. It was swept back from her forehead and perfectly straightened. Her dress was blood red and tight with a long slit up one leg. I guess you could say it's a combination of a dress that, well, I guess to paint a picture, I guess you could say, think of the dress that Jessica Rabbit wears in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I guess would be the best thing to say about it, if I had to guess. She looked like a Bond girl who later turned out to be the villain. I wouldn't really go that far, but okay. She insisted on doing my makeup too. She'd always been a fan of makeovers, she explained. And I let her, seeing as she was way better at makeup than me. She blended golds and browns on my eyes, chose a mutual pink lipstick, filled my eyebrows with a tiny brush, and drew neater winged eyeliner than I had ever been able to achieve alone. There, she said, after what felt like hours but was probably more like 20 minutes. All done. I checked myself out in Rooney's pedestal mirror. I actually looked excellent. Wow. Wow. Go look in the big mirror. You need to see the full effect with your dress. You look like a princess. I did as she said. The dress was straight out of a fairy tale. Floor-length, rose-colored chiffon with a sequined bodice. Excuse me. It wasn't super comfortable. I was wearing a lot of tit tape. But with my wavy hair and shimmery makeup, I did look and feel like a princess. Maybe I could even enjoy tonight. Wilder things had happened. Rudy stood next to me in the mirror. We kind of clash though, red and pink. I think it's a good clash. I look like an angel and you look like a devil. Yes, I'm the anti-you. Or maybe I'm the anti-you. Is this a summary of our whole friendship? We looked at each other and laughed. The theme of the Bailey Ball had been a huge topic of speculation at St. John's College for weeks, and somehow I was one of the only people who hadn't found out what it was before the night of the ball itself. This was probably because the only friend I had in college was Rooney, and she'd refused to tell me when I asked, and I wasn't bothered enough to force it out of her. Apparently there'd been a circus year, Alice in Wonderland, Fairy Tale, Roaring Twenties, Hollywood, Vegas, Masquerade, and Under the Stars. I did wonder whether they were starting to run out of ideas. It wasn't immediately clear what the theme was when we walked through the college corridors and out towards reception. The foyer had been adorned with flowers, and the stairway had been turned into what looked like a castle wall, complete with turrets and a balcony. Inside the dining hall, the circular tables featured centerpieces of more flowers, but also crafted bottles of poison and wooden knives. I only got it when I heard "I'm Kissing You" by Desiree playing overhead. A song I knew featured prominently in a certain 1996 Baz Luhrmann movie. The theme was Romeo and Juliet. Oh, that is great. That's just great. Just what she needed. And I'm pretty sure she's not liking that decision. We met Pip and Jason outside the doors to St. John. Jason gave me an awkward nod, but otherwise said nothing to me. They both looked incredible. Jason was wearing a classic tuxedo, and it hugged his broad shoulders so perfectly that it was like it'd be custom tailored. Pip had styled her hair extra curly and was wearing black cigarette trousers, but with a velvet tuxedo jacket in forest green color. She had paired that with a pair of chunky fox snakeskin Chelsea boots, which somehow exactly matched the color of her tortoiseshell glasses. Rudy's eyes flickered up and down Pip's body. You look nice, she said. Pip struggled not to do the same to Rooney in her Bond girl dress, instead keeping her eyes firmly up at Rooney's face. So do you. Dinner felt like it went on for a year, even though it was only the beginning of what was to be the longest night of my whole life. Rudy, Jason, Pip, and I had to share a table with 4 other people, but thankfully they were all Rudy's friends and acquaintances. While everyone else all got to know each other, I did what I always did and stayed silent, but attentive, smiling and nodding when people spoke, but not really knowing how to get involved in any of the conversations. I felt lower than I had ever felt. I wanted to snap out of it, but I couldn't. I didn't want to be at a party where Jason hated me and Rudy and Pip were living what I would never have. Sunil, dressed in a baby blue tux, and Jess, who was wearing a dress covered in mint green sequins, stopped by to say hello to us, though they mainly spoke to Rudy because she was 3 glasses of wine down and very talkative. When they went to leave, Sunil winked at me, which made me feel better for about 2 minutes, but then the brain goblins returned. This was who I was. I was never going to experience romantic love, all because of my sexuality, a fundamental part of my being that I couldn't change. I drank wine. A lot of wine. It was free. She is going to regret that. Only 8 hours to go, Pip cried as we filed out of the dining hall after dessert. I was absolutely stuffed with food and, to be honest, drunk already. I shook my head. I'm not gonna make it till 6 a.m. Oh, you will! You will! I'm gonna make sure you will. That sounds incredibly menacing. I'll be here to flick you on the forehead if you start falling asleep. Please don't flick me on the forehead. I can, and I will. She attempted to demonstrate, but I ducked out of the way, laughing. Pip already knew how to cheer me up, even if she didn't know I was feeling down in the first place. The Bailey Ball wasn't confined to one ball. It spread throughout the ground floor of the main college building and into a marquee on the green outside. The dining hall was quickly transformed into the main dance hall, of course, with a live band and a bar area. There were several themed rooms serving food and drink, from toasties to ice cream to tea and coffee, and a cinema room that was playing all the different movie adaptations of Romeo and Juliet in chronological order. The corners that we hadn't seen yet were decorated so intensively that you couldn't see the walls anymore. They were covered in flowers, ivy fabrics, fairy lights, and giant crests for Capulet and Montague. For one night only, we were in another world, outside the rules of space and time. Excuse me. Where should we go first? Said Pip. Cinema room? Marquee? She turned round and frowned, confused. Rooney? I turned too and found Rooney a few paces away from us, leaning against the wall. She was drunk for sure, but she was also looking at Pip, almost like she was scared, or at the very least nervous. Then she covered it with a wide grin. I'm gonna go and see my other friends for a bit, she shouted over the crowd and the music. And then she was gone. Other friends? Jason said, confused. She knows everyone, I said, but I wasn't sure how true that rang anymore. She knew a lot of other people, but I was starting to realize that we were her only real friends. Well, she could fuck off then, if she's going to be like that, said Pip, but her heart wasn't in it. Jason rolled her eyes at her. Pip? What? Just, you don't have to keep doing that. We both know you like her. What? Pip's head snapped up. What? No, I don't yes, I like her as a person. I admire her as a director and a creative person, but her personality is very intense, so I wouldn't say I liked her. I just appreciate who she is and what she does. But you fancy her, I stated. It's not a crime. No. Pip folded her arms over her jacket. No, absolutely not, Georgia. She's objectively extremely hot, And yes, in an ordinary situation, she would be exactly my type, and I know that, and I know you know that, but I mean, she's straight and she literally hates me. So even if I did, what would be the point? Pip! I said, exasperated. She shut her mouth. She knew there was nothing she could say to hide it anymore. I think I should go find her, I continued. Why? Just to check she's okay. Pip and Jason didn't protest, so I left to go and find Rooney. I had a feeling that if she continued to get even drunker, she was going to do something she regretted. Ma'am, you have just completely... You have just completely jinxed yourself, and you will see why in a moment. You know, I'm actually going to take a little breather from this. I'm going to get me a... Take a little break from this. I'm going to go ahead and get me something to drink real quick. I will be right back. My glass is trying to fall off my bed. So I'm going to have to go wear them. Okay. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Go ahead and get back into this book. Alright, let's do it. Capulet versus Montague. Rooney was nowhere to be found. There were hundreds of students swarming the college, and it was difficult to even get through the corridors, let alone spot anyone in the crowd standing around chatting, laughing, singing, dancing. She was in there somewhere, no doubt. Rooney seemed to operate like she was a video game protagonist in a world of non-player characters. I hung around the marquee for a while, hoping she might show up, but even if she was here, I probably wouldn't have found her. It was packed because this was where all the fun activities were. A photo booth, popcorn and candy floss stalls, a rodeo bull, and the main attraction, Capulet versus Montague. It looked like a bouncy castle with two raised platforms inside, upon which two students would battle it out with inflatable swords until one person fell down. I watched a few people play and I really did want to have a go, but I didn't know where Rooney was and I felt kind of embarrassed to ask her. I guess I had this feeling that she'd just say no. I got another drink from the bar, which I didn't need because I was already drunk, and stumbled aimlessly around the ball and all its various rooms. The more I drank, the more I could space out and not care about being alone, in every sense of the word. It was hard to forget, though, when every single song that was playing overhead was about romantic love. Obviously, this was deliberate. The theme was Romeo and Juliet, for God's sake, but it still pissed me off. Everything started to remind me of the prom after party. The flashing lights on the dance floor, the love songs, the laughter, the suits and dresses. When I had been at that party, I felt that this was my world, and one day I would be one of these people. I didn't feel like that anymore. I would never be one of these people, flirting, falling in love, happily ever after. I went to curl up in the tea room, only to find myself stuck opposite a couple who were making out in the corner. I hated them. I tried to ignore them and drank my wine while scrolling through Instagram. Georgia! An incredibly loud voice shattered the relaxing atmosphere, startling everyone in the room. I turned towards the door and found Pip there in her green jacket, one hand on her hip and a plastic cup undoubtedly full of alcohol in the other. She grinned sheepishly at the sudden attention. Sorry, didn't know this was the quiet room. She tiptoed over and crouched down next to me, spilling a drop of her drink on the floor. Where's Rooney? She asked. I just shrugged. Oh, well, I have come to challenge you to a Capulet versus Montague duel. That bouncy castle thing? This is so much this is so much more than a bouncy castle, my dude. This is an ultimate test of endurance, agility, and mental fortitude. It looks exactly like a bouncy castle to me. She grabbed my wrist and hoisted me up. Just come and try it. Jason said he needed a nap already, so he's gone back to castle. Wait, he's gone? Yeah, he'll be fine. You know he's terrible at staying up late. I immediately felt guilty. It was my fault Jason was in a mood, and I clambered to my feet, only for the world to move around me, nearly sending me crashing back down. Pip frowned. Jesus, how much have you drunk? Oh, said Pip as we entered the marquee. At first I assumed she was referring to the state of the marquee. When I had come in here at the start of the night, it had been shiny and exciting, colorful and new. Now it looked like a run-down fairground. The floor was sticky and scattered with trampled popcorn. The stalls were less busy and the staff operating them looked tired. But Pip wasn't referring to any of that, which I realized when we were approached by Rudy in her Bond villain dress. She was still, impossibly, wearing her heels, and she must have just touched up her makeup because she looked radiant. Highlighter shimmering, contour as sharp as a knife, and she smiled down at Pip with wide dark eyes. She was also obviously quite drunk. "Excuse me," she said, smirking. "Who invited you? You're not a John student." Pip smirked right back, immediately going along with the joke. "I snuck in. I'm a master of stealth." "Where did you go?" I asked Rooney. "Oh, you know," she said. She put on a voice that made her sound like a rich heiress. "I've just been around, darling." "We were just about to have a bouncy castle battle," said Pip. "You can join us. Someone's about to get absolutely wrecked." Rudy smiled at her with a hint of menace. "Well, I do love wrecking people." "Okay," I found myself saying. "If I had been sober, I probably would have just let this play out. But I was drunk and tired and fed up with both of them. And every time they gazed at each other with that fiery passion that that bordered love and irritation, I wanted to die because that would never happen to me." I looked at Pip, whose bow tie was askew, and her glasses too far down her nose, and at Rooney, whose foundation was not hiding the fluttered blush on her skin. And then I looked between them at the Capulet versus Montague challenge. "I think you two should go first," I said, pointing at it. "Against each other, just to get it out of your system. Please." "I'm in," said Rooney, meeting Pip's glare with knife eyes. Okay," Pip spluttered. "Fine, but I'm not going to go easy on you." "Do I look like the sort of person who likes it when people go easy on me?" Pip's eyes drifted down Rooney's dress, then quickly back up. "No." "Well then." This was becoming absolutely unbearable, so I walked up to the guy operating the contraption and said, "These two want to go." He nodded wearily, then gestured at the two raised platforms. "Climb on." The two girls didn't speak as they clambered on the bouncy castle, Rudy kicking her heels off as she went, and then onto the two raised platforms. This was clearly more difficult than either of them had anticipated. Pip's skinny trousers were only slightly more practical than Rudy's tight dress. But they made it, and the guy handed them each what looked like a swimming pool noodle. "You have 3 minutes," he droned, gesturing to the countdown timer on display at the back of the bouncy castle. "The aim is to knock the other person off their platform before the time runs out. Are you ready?" Rudy nodded with the intense focus of a tennis player at Wimbledon. "Fuck yeah," said Pip, gripping her noodle. "Shut up." Anybody who even knows the context is probably going to make a joke, and I'm just saying it right now. Shut up. The guy sighed. Then he pressed a button on the floor and a beep sounded 3 times. A countdown. 3, 2, 1. Start. Rudy went straight for the jugular immediately. She swung the noodle widely towards Pip, but Pip saw it coming and blocked it with her own noodle, though not without wobbling on her platform. The platform was circular and could only have been a half a meter in diameter. This probably wasn't going to last very long. Pip laughed. "Not fucking around then?" Rudy grinned. "No, I'm trying to win." Pip thrust her noodle forward in an attempt to push Rudy backwards, but Rudy swerved her torso, doing an almost 90-degree bend to one side. All right, gymnast, said Pip. Dance, actually, Rooney shot back. Until I was 14. She swung the noodle at Pip once again, but Pip blocked it. And the fight began. Rooney swung this way and that, but Pip's reflexes only seemed to have been sharpened by the alcohol she'd drunk, which made no sense whatsoever. Rooney swiped left, Pip parried. Rooney swiped right, Pip dodged. Pip jabbed forward, trying to push Rooney back by the shoulder, and for a moment I thought it was all over, but Rooney regained her balance with a sly grin, and the battle continued. Your concentration face is so funny, said Rooney, laughing. She did an impression of Pip's scrunched up expression. Not as funny as your face is going to be when I win, Pip shot back. But there was a hint of a smile on her face, too. There were more swings and jabs, and at one point they were having a full-on lightsaber battle. Pip prodded Rooney on the side, and she nearly went down, saving herself at the last second by using her noodle as a crutch, which made Pip laugh so hard she nearly fell off on her own. That was when I realized that they were enjoying themselves. That was also when the alcohol rushed to the top of my head, and I felt like I was going to fall over. I stumbled as carefully as I could over to the side of the marquee and sat down against the fabric to watch the finale. I couldn't help but notice that Rooney, as ruthless as she appeared from her wild, large swings, was strategically avoiding Pip's face so as to not hit her glasses. Pip, however, was out for blood. Why are you so bendy? Pip cried as Rooney dodged another jab. Just one of my many charms. Many charms? Plural? I think you know all about them, Pip squeaked. Pip swung her noodle at Rooney, but Rooney blocked it. You are a fucking nightmare. Rooney smirked back. I am, and you love it. Pip released what could only be described as a war cry. She jabbed the noodle at Rooney, then again, and then a third time, knocking the girl back gently each time. And on the fourth, Rooney went down, falling perfectly backwards from the podium and down onto the bouncy castle, letting out a short scream as she went. Yes! Pip cried, holding her noodle aloft in victory. The guy operating the bouncy castle stopped the timer and gestured vaguely at Pip. Glasses wins. Pip leapt off the podium and started bouncing next to Rooney, making it hard for her to get up. Having some trouble down there, mate? Rooney tried to get to her feet, but just ended up tumbling back down, again as Pip bounced next to her. Oh my god, stop! I thought you were a dancer. Where's your coordination? We didn't dance on a bouncy castles. Pip finally slowed down her bouncing, coming to a halt, and holding out a hand to help Rooney up. Rooney looked at it, and I could see her considering, but she didn't take it, instead standing up on her own. Good game, she said, one eyebrow raised. Then she walked away, or rather, clambered away across the bouncy castle and rolled over the edge onto solid ground. You're not going to be a sore loser, are you? Pip called after her, also dropping down and rolling off the contraption. Rooney tutted so loud even I heard her from across the marquee. Oh, Pip grinned. You are. I should have guessed. Rooney started cramming her feet back into her heels. She probably wanted to regain a significant height advantage over Pip. Hey! Pip raised her voice, calling after her. Why do you hate me so much? Rooney stopped. Yeah, that's right, Pip continued, raising her arms. I said it. Why do you hate me? We're both drunk and we might as well just get it out there. Is it because I was George's best friend first, so I'm in the way? Rooney said nothing, but she finished putting on her heels and stood up to her full height. Or do you just hate who I am as a person? Rooney swung around and said, You are very stupid, and you should have let me win. There was a pause. Sometimes I get to have what I want, said Pip with unnerving calmness. Sometimes I get to be the person who wins. I barely had time to think about the statement because Rooney was all about to erupt. She scrunched her hands in a fist, and I could sense a real argument was coming. Drink, drink-fueled and embarrassing to look back on. I needed to stop it. I needed to end this before it got any worse. These were the only two friends I had left. So I hauled myself to my feet, which was a task in my dress. I opened my mouth to speak, to try and bring this to a halt, even to try and help. But what actually happened was all the blood rushed to my head. Stars tingled at the corner of my vision, and my hearing went fuzzy. And then I passed out. Hello, Malia. How you doing tonight? You're actually just in time because we're about to go into the we're about to go into the section of the story where, if you've read, like, even remotely, if you've read or watched any kind of romance movies or novels or whatever, this is going to be the part where a major issue is going to happen, and it's going to be a wonder how it's going to be fixed. I'm not going to say what that problem is, but it's going to happen. Defeated. Doing good. How are you? I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. Just reading this book. Defeated. I regained consciousness to find Pip patting my face slightly too hard. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, she was stammering. Please stop slapping me, I mumbled. Rooney was there too, the annoyance completely gone from her expression and replaced by serious concern. Holy shit, Georgia, how much did you drink? 14. 14 what? 14 drinks. No, you didn't. Okay, I can't remember how much I drank. So, why did you say 14? Sounded like a good number. We were interrupted by a few other students peering over Pip's and Rooney's shoulders, asking politely if I was okay. I realized I was still lying on the floor, which was awkward, so I sat up and reassured everyone that I was fine, and had just a bit too much to drink, which they chuckled at and went on with their evenings. If I hadn't been absolutely pissed out of my head, I would have been deeply embarrassed, but thankfully I was, and the only thing going through my mind was how much I wanted to throw up. Rudy pulled me to my feet, one arm around my waist, which seemed to annoy Pip for some reason. We should go chill in the cinema room for a bit, said Rooney. We've still got 6 hours to kill. We can get you sobered up. 6 hours? Sober was the last thing I wanted to be right now. No, I mumbled. But Rooney either ignored me or didn't hear me. Let me go. I'm fine. Clearly you are not. We're going to sit on a beanbag chair with some water for the next half an hour, whether you like it or not. You're not my mom. Well, your real mom would thank me. Rudy supported most of my weight as we walked through the floral, twinkling corridors of college, Pip trailing behind us. Nobody spoke until we reached out the door of the cinema room, and a loud voice behind us cried, Pip! Oh my god, hi! In my hazy state, I peered behind me at the voice. It belonged to a guy leading a larger group of people who I didn't recognize, and likely because they were from Pip's college. Come hang with us, the guy continued. We're all going to dance for a bit. Pip shuffled awkwardly. She turned back to look at me. I didn't really know what to say, but thankfully Rudy spoke for me. Just go. She'll be fine with me. I nodded in agreement, giving her a wobbly thumbs up. Okay, well, I'll meet you back here in, an hour, said Pip. Yeah, said Rooney. And then we turned away and Pip was gone. Here, said Rooney, handing me a large glass of water and a toasty cheese and a folded up napkin as she slumped down next to me on a beanbag. I took them obediently. What's in this? I said, waving the toasty. Cheese and Marmite. Risky choice, I said, biting down into it. What if I hated Marmite? It was the only filling they had left, so you're gonna eat it and make do. Thankfully, I love Marmite, and even if I didn't, I probably would have eaten it anyway because I was suddenly ravenous. I like how they put it in italics, basically saying it like that. The nausea had passed and my stomach felt painfully empty, so I munched on the toasty while we watched the movie that was currently playing on the screen. We were the only people in the room. Distantly, we could hear the thumping of the DJ's music in the dance hall, which was no doubt where most people were. There was also some chattering coming from the room opposite, which was serving free tea and toasties, and occasionally loud laughter and voices would drift past the door as students went about their night together, doing whatever to pass the time until the end of the ball at dawn. It didn't feel like a ball anymore. It felt like a giant sleepover where nobody wanted to be the first to go to sleep. The movie was the best adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. Baz Luhrmann's 90s one with Leonardo DiCaprio. Quick question before I continue with reading this. How many people have seen that version of Romeo and Juliet? I can say I have, and I do think it is a good movie. And if you haven't seen it but you like Shakespeare adaptations, watch it. I think you'll like it. We hadn't missed much. Romeo was walking moodily along the beach, so we settled down into the beanbag to watch, not speaking. We stayed that way, engrossed, for the next 45 minutes. That was roughly how long it took me to sober up a little and for my brain to start working again. Where'd you go? Was the first thing I said. Rooney didn't look away from the screen. I'm right here? No, earlier. You left and then you were gone. There was a pause. Just hanging out with some people. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. She glanced at me. You were okay though, right? I could barely remember how I'd spent the time between dinner and the bouncy castle battle, wandering through the dance hall, sitting in the tea room, exploring the marquee but not having to go at any of the stalls. Yeah, I was fine, I said. Good. Did you dance with Jason? Oh, and there was that. Nope, I said. Oh, how come? I wanted to tell her everything. I was going to tell her everything. Was it the alcohol? The buzz of the ball? The fact that Rooney was starting to know me better than anyone, all because she slept 2 meters from me every night? Me and Jason isn't going to happen, I said. She nodded. Yeah, I guess I got that impression, but I just assumed you were still dating. No, I ended it. Why? Because the words were on the tip of my tongue. Because I am aromantic and asexual, but it sounded clunky. It still felt like fake words in my brain. Secret words. Whispered words that didn't belong in the real world. It wasn't that I thought Rooney would react badly. She wouldn't react with disgust or anger. She wasn't like that. But I thought she would react with awkwardness, with confusion, and, okay, what the fuck is that? She would nod politely once I explained it, but in her head she would be thinking, oh my god, George is really weird. Somehow, that felt almost as bad. Because I don't like guys, I said. As soon as I said it, I realized my mistake. Once again, she let her mouth do the speaking for her, instead of thinking about what to say, but she was already thinking so much, overthinking. She was thinking so much, it was basically overthinking, and that can be a problem. I would know. I've done my own fair share of overthinking things. Oh, said Rooney. Oh my God. She sat up nodding, taking this information in. That's okay. Fuck. I mean, I'm glad you realized. Congrats, I guess? She laughed. It seems way better to not be attracted to guys. Girls are much nicer all around. Then she made a pained expression. Oh my God. I spent so much time and energy trying to set you up with Jason. Why didn't you say anything? Before I had time to respond, she interrupted herself. No, sorry, that's an idiotic thing to say. I agree. And I'm saying that as myself. I agree with that. Obviously, you were working shit out. That's fine. I mean, that's what university is for, isn't it? Experimenting and figuring out who you actually like. She patted me firmly on the leg. And you know what this date? And you know what this means? Now we can focus on finding you a nice girl to date. Oh my God, I know so many cute girls who would like you. You have to come with me on a night out next week. I can introduce you to so many girls. All the time she was monologuing, I felt myself getting hotter and hotter. If I didn't speak up, I was going to lose my nerve and start going along with this new lie. And then I'd have to go through with the whole trying to date thing again. I don't really want to do that, I said, fiddling with the now empty toasty napkin. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, that's fine. Rudy sipped on her own glass of water and spent a few moments watching the screen. Then she continued, You don't have to get into dating right now. You've got so much time. So much time. I wanted to laugh. I don't think I will, I said. Will what? Date. Ever. I don't like girls either. I don't like anyone. The words echoed around the room. There was a long pause. And then Rudy laughed. You were drunk, she said. I was, a little, but that wasn't the point. And she laughed. That annoyed me. That was how I'd expected her to react. That was how I expected everyone to react. Pitying, awkward laughter. I don't like guys, I said. And I don't like girls. I don't like anyone. So I'm never going to date anyone. Rudy said nothing for a few moments. And then she said, Listen, Georgia, you might feel that way right now, but don't give up hope. Maybe you're going through a rough patch at the moment. Like, I don't know, the stress of starting uni or whatever, but you will meet someone you like one day. Everyone does. That is not what she needed to hear at all. No, they don't want. They. No, they don't, was what I wanted to say. Not everyone. Not me. It's a real thing, I said. It's a real sexuality when you don't like anyone. I couldn't say the actual words, though. It probably wouldn't have helped if I had. Okay, said Rooney. Well, how do you know that you are that? How do you know that you won't meet someone one day who you really like? I stared at her. Of course she didn't understand. Rooney wasn't the romance expert I thought she was. I was pretty sure I knew more than her at this point. I've never had a crush on anyone in my life, I said, but my voice was quiet and I didn't even sound confident, let alone feel confident about who I was. I liked the idea of it, but the reality... I trailed off, feeling a lump in my throat. If I tried to explain it, I knew I would just start crying. It was still so new. I'd never tried to explain it to anyone before. Have you kissed a girl then? I looked at her. She was looking at me level-headedly, almost like a challenge. No, I said. So how do you know you don't like that? Deep down, I knew this was an unfair question. You didn't have to try something to know for sure you don't like it. I knew I didn't like the skydiving. I definitely didn't need to try that out to prove it. But I was drunk, and so was she. I don't know, I said. Maybe you should give it a go before you know, completely reject the idea that you could possibly find someone. Rooney laughed again. She wasn't trying to do it in a mean way, but that was how it felt. I knew she just wanted to help, and that sort of made it worse. She was trying to be a good friend, but she was saying all the wrong things because she didn't have the faintest idea what it was like to be me. Maybe, I mumbled, leaning back into the beanbag chair. Why don't you try with me? Wait. What? What? I said, turning my head to face her. She rolled to one side so her whole body was facing mine, then held up both hands in a gesture of surrender. I literally just want to help. I absolutely don't like you that way, no offense, but you might be able to get a sense of whether it's something you might like. I want to help. But I don't like you like that, I said. Even if I was gay, I wouldn't necessarily feel something just because you're a girl. Okay, maybe not, she said with a sigh. I just don't want to see you give up without trying. She was annoying me, and I realized that it was because what I was doing wasn't giving up. It was acceptance. And maybe, just maybe, that could be a good thing. I don't want you to feel like you're going to be sad and lonely forever. Forever. Wait, hold on, let me say that better. I don't want you to feel like you're going to be sad and lonely forever, she said. And that was the moment I broke a little. Was that all I would be? Sad and lonely? Forever? Had I doomed myself by daring to think about this part of me? Was I just accepting a life of solitude? As soon as those questions hit me, they opened the floodgate to all the doubts I thought I'd been fighting off. Maybe it was all just a phase. Maybe this was giving up. Maybe I should keep trying. Maybe. Fine then, I said. You want to try? I sighed, defeated, tired. I was so tired of all of this. Yeah, go on then. It couldn't really be any worse than the one with Jason, could it? And so, she leaned in. She just had to say that, didn't she? She knows. Okay, so let's think about this for a moment here before we get into what's about to happen. Let's think about this for a minute. Even in a drunken stupor, she should know that Pip clearly had feelings for Rooney. Alright? It was very clear from the beginning of this whole ball, and for a while in the middle of part 3, that she had feelings for Rooney. If not also part 2 a little bit. Georgia should know by now that the two of them seem to have feelings for each other. But instead, she chooses, I don't know why, but she chooses to have Georgia experiment on kissing a, another woman. Let's see how well this goes. No. Let me rephrase that. Let's see how bad this is gonna go. Because we all know this is not gonna end well. We all know it to be true. It was different. Rooney was used to deeper, longer kisses of an entirely different type. She led. I tried to imitate her. I hated it. I hated it just as I had hated the kiss with Jason. I hated how close her face was to me. I hated the feeling of her lips moving around against mine. I hated her breath on my skin. My eyes kept flickering open, trying to get a sense of when this was going to be over, while she put her hand on the back of my head, pulling me closer to her. I tried to imagine doing this with a person I liked, but it was a mirage. The harder I tried to think about that scenario, the quicker it disintegrated. Excuse me. I was never ever going to enjoy this with anybody. It wasn't just a dislike of kissing. It wasn't a fear or nervousness or not meeting the right person yet. This was a part of me. I did not feel the feelings of attraction, of romance, of desire that other people felt. And I wasn't ever going to. I totally hadn't needed to kiss anyone to work that out. Rooney, on the other hand, was going for it, which I assumed was what she did with everybody. The way she kissed made it feel like she really did like me, but I realized suddenly that I knew her better than that. It was never about the other person. She was using this to make her feel good about herself. I didn't have the energy to start to understand what that meant. "Oh," said a voice from behind us. Rooney moved away from me instantly, and I, hazy, and a little weirded out by this whole situation, turned to see who it was. I should have guessed, really, because the universe seemed to have it in for me already. Pip had her jacket folded over one arm and a toasty in her other hand. She then trailed off. She was looking at me, eyes wide, then at Rooney, then back at me again. "I brought you a toasty, but..." She looked at the toasty. "It... fucking hell." She looked back at both of us. "Wow. Fuck you both." What did I just say? Told you she jinxed herself. Paper flowers. Rooney leapt up to her feet. "Hang on, you literally don't understand what was just happening." Pip's stare hardened. "I think it's pretty plainly obvious what was just happening," she said. "So don't try and insult me by lying about it." "I'm not, but if this was a thing, you could have at least told me about it." She turned her stare to me, her face scarily blank of emotion. "You could have at least told me about it." And then she walked out of the room. Rooney wasted no time in running after her, and I quickly followed. I needed to explain. Rooney needed to explain. Everyone just needed to stop lying and acting and pretending all the time. Rooney grabbed Pip's shoulders just as she got to the end of the corridor, and pulled her around to face her. "Pip, just listen." "To what?" Pip shouted. Then lowered her voice as a few passing students turned around curiously. If you're seeing each other, fine. Just go and fuck each other and enjoy yourselves. But you could have at least done me the courtesy of informing me, so you could try and put a stop to my feelings and not be absolutely fucking crushed right now." Her voice broke, and then there were tears in her eyes. I wanted to explain, but I couldn't. I had ruined my friendship with Jason, and now I was destroying my friendship with Pip too. I don't... We don't... We're not together. Rudy gestured to me wildly. I swear, it was my fucking idea because I'm an idiot. George has just been figuring shit out and I've just been making stuff worse, making her date Jason as an experiment when she never really wanted to do that, and now this... It felt like the wall shattered around us. Pip clenched her fists. Wait. She turned to me. Jason was just an experiment? I wanted to say no, he wasn't. I thought I liked him. I genuinely wanted to fall for him, but... Was that a lie? Pip's face crumpled. She took a step towards me, and now she was shouting. How could you do that? How could you do that to him? I stepped back, feeling tears forming. Don't cry. Do not cry. Stop blaming her, Rooney shouted back. She was figuring out her sexuality. Well, she shouldn't have done that with her best friend who'd only just got out of a relationship that made her feel like an actual piece of shit. She was right. I'd fucked up. I'd fucked up so bad. Rooney physically put an arm in between me and Pip. Stop trying to make this about something else when we know what this is about. Oh yeah? Pip's voice lowered. There were tear stains down her cheeks. What's this about then? About the fact that you hate me. You think I'm taking Georgia away from you and because she's one of your only two friends? You despise me because you think I'm replacing you in her life. There was a silence. Pip's eyes widened. You don't know anything, she said hoarsely and turned around. I'm leaving. Wait, I said. The first fucking thing I'd said. Pip turned back, struggling to say anything through her tears. What? Got anything to say? I didn't. I couldn't form the words. That's what I thought, she said. You never have anything to say. And then she was gone. Rudy went right after her, but I stayed where I was in the corridor. The walls around me were made of paper flowers. Above me were twinkling fairy lights. Students passed, laughing, holding hands, wearing stylish suits and sparkly dresses. The song playing overhead was Young Hearts Run Free by Candy Staton. I hated all of it. Final chapter until the end of part 3. Survivor. I wandered through dimly lit corridors and raucous crowds. I stood at the edge of the dance hall as the band was finishing their set, playing a slow song so all the couples could hold each other and sway. It made me feel sick. Rudy and Pip were nowhere, so I went back to my room. It was the only thing I could think to do. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time, wondering if this was the moment when I would just collapse. I could just let it out and start sobbing because I had fucked it all up. I had fucked everything up in my quest to understand who I was. Despite the fact that Pip and Jason had so much to deal with on their own, I had only truly been thinking about myself. But I didn't cry. I was silent. I didn't want to be awake anymore. I went to sleep for a few hours, and when I woke up, I could hear the thumping of people having sex in the rooms above me. This was, perhaps, the final straw. Was everyone just having sex and falling in love all the time? Why? How was it fair that everyone got to feel that except me? I wished everyone would stop. I wished sex and love didn't exist. I stormed out of the room, not even taking my phone with me, ran up the stairs to the corridor above two at a time, not quite knowing what I was going to do when I got there, but I could at least see whose room it was, and maybe at a later date I could track them down and tell them to stop being so loud. When I reached the point in the corridor that was above my room, I stopped and stood very still. Excuse me. It was a utility room. Inside, 6 washing machines and 6 dryers. One of the washing machines was on. It was making a rhythmic thumping sound against the wall. Back in my room, I realized that it was only 10 minutes until 6 a.m., the time of the fabled survivors photo. I just go and have a look, see how many people had made it. The answer was not very many. Of the hundreds of students that had been bustling around college earlier, there could only have been about 80 left, and they'd all congregated in the dance hall. A tired-looking photographer was waiting for the drunk, sleep-deprived students to organize themselves into rows. I didn't know whether to join them or not. I felt like a bit of a fraud, since I basically napped through the last 5 hours. Georgia! I turned, scared that I'd face Jason or Rooney or Pip, but it was none of them. Sunil approached me from the dance hall's doorway. His tie was undone. His baby blue jacket was slung over one arm, and he looked unnaturally awake for 6 a.m. He clapped his hands onto my upper arms and shook me a little. You made it! You made it to 6 a.m. I'm very impressed. I gave up at midnight when I was a fresher. I had a nap, I said. Sunil grinned. Good shout. Got to be strategic about these things. Jess went for a nap a couple hours ago, but hasn't resurfaced, so I think she's failed again this year. I blinked. I didn't know what to say to him. So, no one else made it? No one else make it? Rooney? Pip? Jason? I looked around. Neither Rooney, Pip, nor Jason were anywhere to be seen. I had no idea where anyone was. No, just me. Sunil nodded. Ah, well, you'll get a brag tomorrow. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders and started walking us towards the throng of students. You're a survivor. I tried to smile, but it just turned into a lip wobble. Sunil didn't see, too busy leading us onward. I blinked again, and then I said it. I think I might be asexual and also aromantic. Both of them. Sunil stopped walking. Yeah? He said. Yeah, I said, looking at the floor. Don't really know what to do about that. Sunil stayed very still for a moment. Then he moved, his arm dropping away from me and turning so that he stood directly in front of me. He put his hands on my shoulders and bent a little so that our faces were level. There's nothing to do, Georgia, he said softly. There's nothing to do at all. And then the photographer started getting impatient and shouted at everyone to get organized. So Sunil marched us over to the scrum, and we squeezed into the third row next to a couple of his friends. And as he turned away to chat to them, only then did I realize that what I'd said was undeniably true. I knew that now. Sunil turned back, squeezed my shoulder and said, You're gonna be okay. There's nothing you have to do except be. But what if I am what if what I am is just nothing? I breathed out and blinked as the photographer took the first shot. What if I'm nothing? You're not nothing, Sunil said. You have to believe that. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could believe. Excuse me. And that's the end of part 3. So, part 4 is going to be the start of the fallout of all that has happened in part 3. From from George's situation with Jason, as well as the situation going on with Pip. I'm not going to say what happened. I do know what happens, but I'm not going to spoil anything here. I'm just going to say this is going to be where Georgia and Pip are going to try. Where Georgia, Pip, I don't know about Sunil, but and partly Sunil, all three of them will try to do whatever they can to get Jason and Pip back into the swing of things. It's gonna be a long road, that is for sure. But it is gonna be a hell of a journey for all involved, for all 5 of them. We'll see what happens when I read part 4 at some point. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this part of Loveless. And if you did, you know what to do at this point. I don't need to say anything. But also, I do want to make a quick thing real quick. If you guys noticed, I did make a new playlist showing off all the reading streams that I have. It's still a bit of a work in progress because I'm pretty sure I do have books that I may need to put on there, but whatever. In any case, there is a new playlist, so if you guys want to watch any of my other streams of books that I've read, there you go. That is all up to you guys. This will be added to it as soon as it is uploaded to YouTube after, once YouTube is ready to make it into a full-time VOD. But in any case, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Forrest Walpole, signing off.